Hey, always good to see you, Malcolm. Always good to see you. And look, I kind of feel almost foolish for doing this massive project because what a nothing burger. All this was a photo. This all this was a photo op. It was a photo op. That's all it was with a
Well,
war criminal.
I think it was bigger than that, but not for the Trump team. It was
Mhm.
a very nice, clear, multi-month effort by Vladimir Putin to work Steve Witkoff to get them to believe that Donald Trump was on a path to a Nobel Prize, and to think that something big would come of a Trump-Putin summit. And as you know, I've written several books about Donald Trump, and my last one about Trump was called The Plot to Betray America: How Team Trump Embraced Our Enemies and What We Can Do About It, right? But this is a clear case of him not just embracing our enemy. It showed the senior subordinate relationship in
Mhm.
this affair. We thought we had seen it in Helsinki. No, we really saw it now. Donald Trump as the subordinate, right? Parlayed American superpower, America's richness, America's military strength, and laid it all out to honor a KGB officer, a
And an
KGB
an
officer,
indicted war criminal. An indicted
indicted
war
war criminal
criminal.
who should have been arrested on the spot. He did it with red carpets, with applauding him for coming to Alaska, and Putin and Witkoff put this together. And I suspect in the end, even Trump will be upset because the coverage has been horrendous. Fox News called it weak. On CNN, they had a former general who goes, "This is the most despicable moment in modern American history where the United States bowed down like we were Lukashenko and Belarus, bowed down to Putin." And by the way, speaking of Lukashenko, as a component of this, Trump spoke to Zelensky this week, along with Prime Minister Merz and President Macron. But he also gave a private call to Lukashenko in Belarus because Putin asked him to. So now I see this as the moment that the United States, well, actually, I saw it the moment the United States had gone over to what I called in my book, The Plot to Destroy Democracy, the axis of autocrats.
Mhm.
And Trump went over really when he directed Marco Rubio to vote in alignment with Russia, Ukraine, not Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, North Korea, right? And Myanmar, okay, against a resolution to condemn Russia. Just
Mhm.
insane, right? The United States is now a voting bloc member of the Russian fucking Federation.
How much of this is was also kind of another Epstein,
Well,
distraction?
everything is an Epstein distraction because this I don't even want to use the words they tried to do it. This summit, right, which was supposed to be about bringing peace to to Europe, and which we all know is just sophistry. This is all bullshit on Trump's part, but the because we've seen real summits in our lives where the stakes were very high, right? Nixon to
Hmm.
China,
Hmm.
Gorbachev to America. This was not that at all. This was literally bending at the knee, genuflection. So, but the way it came about with Trump giving them a 50-day deadline and then just arbitrarily on a whim, okay, I'm going to bring that down to 12 days. And then they didn't even make it to 12 days. They got to day 10 and they announced we're going to meet him next week, which is bullshit. You know, they had been planning this for months. And Trump really needed what he thought would be a huge distraction from the Epstein files issue. And I'm afraid to say that that short circuited himself. if he had done something monumental, all right, and I'm going to give you something Trump could do if he'd actually like a Nobel Prize, right? If he had managed to talk a 75% reduction in land-based ballistic missiles with atomic bombs on them between the United States and Russia, that would have worked. Trump is he says he's an anti-nuke. If he had gotten rid of the two legs of the U.S. triad and gone to submarines, right? Everybody would say, "Whoa, earth-shattering! This is the biggest change since Oppenheimer, right? Since the first bomb went off at Trinity Site." Nope. None of that. Here's what they had. They didn't even have coffee together. They didn't even have coffee together. Right now, you and I having coffee in our respective capital cities, we are actually achieving more than they achieved. So this was a propaganda show for Putin. Now this, by the way, is part of Alexander Dugin's, right? Putin's, crazy ideological philosophy.
Kremlin philosopher, yeah.
This is part of Russia taking its position that Trump, Putin, and Z all seem to agree with, that I wrote about in my 2018 book, The Plot to Destroy Democracy, in that the world is becoming tripolar. And the bipole of America as the anchor to the Atlantic Alliance and Europe as an independent anchor, which works symbiotically, that is over in the era of Trump. It could be restored afterwards. But as far as Trump is concerned, he views Europe as Putin's property. And this aligning himself with the United States, Belarus, and Russia is exactly what I wrote about, which is the United States now views itself as the primary prop of the Western Hemisphere, right? Russia would be allowed to do what they want in the Eastern Hemisphere, right, as the central pillar to that, and China would be the Asian Hemisphere, right? Trump views the world that way. But I really am more afraid that he now views himself as now that's the political lines of contact in the world. Then there is the oligarch component of this, which is that the United States now sees itself as a full member of the axis of autocracy. And to be a member of the axis of autocracy, autocrats now are strictly motivated by money. And, or let me rephrase that, lubricated by corporate money to carry out political goals which meet their corporate interests. And that is what Benito Mussolini invented when he said il fascisti, right? Fascism is a dictatorship and symbiotic relationship of the corporate right, to establish a country to greatness. Trump views himself as part of that axis of autocrats, but loves the idea of oligarch money. And Putin is sitting on maybe $500 billion of untapped, sanctioned oligarch money. And that's the real thing. By the way, were you aware they bought a business group over in another airplane to have business discussions with the Commerce Secretary and other cabinet members? This is about bringing Russia out of the hole so that they can gain access to their money and to be quite honest, to their women. A lot of Republicans think that Russia's the last bastion of untapped white women. That's not a joke.
Yeah, no, I know. I do know that. I'm not going to keep you much longer. We're doing, quick a compendium of different reactions to what happened. But let me ask you this before I let you go. You are very active in the Legion. Yes. You fought here in Ukraine. You support the Legion. You support the Ukrainian armed cause to resist
absolutely
Russia. With that perspective in mind, what is your response to, we are not one step closer to a peace deal. We are not, the guns will not fall silent anytime soon.
No.
What's your reflection as a legionnaire and as somebody who supports men in uniform, men and women in
Well,
uniform here?
as we met in that
That's
month,
right.
right? The month before the war, and where I learned that Ukraine is a surprisingly European country. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
beautiful,
also and
clean,
also clean, beautiful, all the rest of it, but also with the mentality that is in direct conflict with what you just outlined of this kind of like breaking up the world into spheres of influence.
right?
Ukraine has been a colony of other empires for centuries, and one of the pillars of why the people are picking up weapons and operating drones on the front line is to resist this concept that a
Absolutely,
small country has sovereignty.
right.
Not to distract you, but I think those things are connected. When
I
when
said
you
that I
look
went
at
to
it,
Yeah, I said
yeah,
that I went to Ukraine to fight for democracy. This is the country we should be now, right? This is what we landed on Normandy for, which was to take back a nation from dictatorship, fascism, and allow them to live free and breathe freedom and liberty as America has defined it for 250 years. And now America is becoming the autocracy, a dictatorship, and Ukraine is showing us how it's done. Zelensky is truly the Churchill of his time. But look, I support the Legion every day. I pay the rent on our safe houses. I spend thousands of dollars of, money that I make on YouTube and Substack. I don't feel that I deserve that money. I give that money to my battalion. We just did a giant drone raffle for wild hornets, right? We just raised $25,000 so Wild Hornets can create interceptor drones. And that's nothing to me. My friends have sacrificed their blood, their bodies, their lives. My Ukrainian friends and my members of the International Legion that are still fighting on the Kharkiv, holding the line on the Kharkiv front. But to see the United States walk away from those values is disgusting. Ukrainian support is now reaching its highest level. Even 67%, I believe, of Republicans think that Ukraine should receive more weapons and are starting to fall away from this thing. When the meta narrative now starts to break, and this is the last thing I'll say, that Donald Trump is now a KGB dictator and is now essentially a junior Lukashenko in this thing. When people start realizing America greatness has just been compromised because Donald Trump wants a Trump Tower in Moscow, and it's now before their eyes. This dud of a performance evaluation meeting, which is what I think Putin was giving him in when he rode around in the Beast, an honor he hasn't given to any other president, if I'm not mistaken, any other world leader. I've never seen another world leader ride in the Beast, the president's limousine. So interesting, but we there's a lot to be seen. But I'm just grateful that he did not turn Ukraine over to Russia yesterday. But mark my words, though, J.D. Vance set the pace 3 days ago. And this is the real danger because the top four richest men in Silicon Valley are ardent haters of Ukraine. Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, the guy who that owns J.D. Vance, Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, and David Sachs all loathe Ukraine and say it publicly. J.D. Vance said the other day that we'll sell weapons to Ukraine if they have money. We will stop giving them weapons and intelligence. I think intelligence is going to go away. I think it really is going to go away. I think it'll just be straight foreign military sales, FMS, and Europe has to pay for it. And that's what he said. He said, but the United States is out.
Ugh, wow. Yeah, nothing good came from it. Nothing substantive came from it, and I share your concerns that this administration, in particular, is just looking for an excuse to abandon Ukraine.
Yeah,
Malcolm, it's always good to see you. It's always good to talk to you. We're going to keep doing it. You stay in touch with me. I'll stay
my
in touch
pleasure.
with you. And one way or another, we're going to keep supporting Ukraine. I know I am, and I know you are too.
You kidding? That's unassailable.
All right, buddy. Well,
All
thanks
right.
for your time.
Slava Ukraini.
Geroyam Slava.